And we are live. Welcome to another live with me, Dr. Yewande. I'm just going to go live on Instagram as well. And so, whether you're joining me live on YouTube, whether you're joining me live, welcome Instagram. Welcome to another live with me, Dr. Yewande. And we're going to jump right into it because this is a topic that has been highly requested. And it's a topic that comes up quite often in my practice, in conversations. Welcome, Ayomide. Welcome, Mie. Welcome to everyone who's joining live, whether you're on Instagram, you're on YouTube. I'm just going to take some time to just welcome those that are joining live. And of course, if you're watching the replay, it's great to have you watching the replay. Today, we are going to be discussing consistency. We're just going to be discussing consistency, and I'm going to be sharing some proven tips and shifts and practical things that you can do to help with your consistency. Like I said, this is a topic that has come up time and time again. And so it's great to have you joining me today. Welcome, Adeboying. Good to have you on live. And so a scenario that's very common, and I'm sure you have at some point experienced this. I'm going to see if I can just move Instagram so that we're facing each other. Okay, so I'm addressing Instagram and YouTube. So if you see my eyes moving back and forth, that's why. And so consistency. Oh, let me move this out of the way. Consistency is something that causes a lot of headaches for people. In that they'll come and they'll say, you know what, Dr. Yewande, I started this thing, but I'm not consistent. Or I used to do this thing, but I haven't been consistent. If that's something that's relatable to you, please let me know. Let me know that I'm not the only one that has at some point or the other struggled with consistency. Now, whether that is as a result of season changes, which we're going to be talking about, whether that's as a result of, just life changes. I want to know, am I the only one who has struggled with consistency where you started something, maybe you did it for a whole 19 days, and before you know it, you stopped. Every day is like, yeah. I think I'm talking to a lot of us, myself included, because there certainly have been seasons where I have struggled with consistency, whether it's in my exercise, whether it's in my diet, whether it is how I show up at work, for my kids, various areas of my life. There has been a struggle when it comes to consistency. And so that is what we're going to be talking about today. So we start something, we get excited. Hi, Fatai, good to see you. We start something, we get excited, and then before you know it, 1 week has passed, 2 weeks has passed, the novelty of it has worn off, and we are no longer excited. And all of a sudden, the habit falls aside. The habit falls aside, or what we think was or thought was a habit, it hasn't become a habit yet. It falls aside. What we were actually relying on was excitement. We were relying on novelty. We were relying on the newness of it all at the very beginning. But unfortunately, once all of that goes away, again, whether that's a workout routine, whether it's meal planning, meal prepping, whether it's certain systems that we want to incorporate in our parenting, in our marriage, in our relationships. It could be even our devotional Bible study. Maybe we say, okay, now I want to start meditating more often. And maybe we do it for a week, and before we know it, it's fallen off the wayside. It's certainly something that has happened to me in the past. But what I want to share today are some tips that will help you when it comes to navigating consistently, that navigating this challenge with consistency and showing up more consistently. So whether you're here on Instagram or whether you are on YouTube or watching the replay, it's so great to have you. So the first thing I want to address are some myths that we have when it comes to consistency. I think a lot of us, and in the conversations that I've had with many people, one of the first myths that I see is that in order to be considered a consistent person, you need to be someone who starts something and you don't stop doing it. Meaning that you start and you keep doing it and you keep doing it and you keep doing it and you keep doing it, almost as if you never stop and you're never supposed to take a break, right? Let me know if that's something that you have believed when it comes to this idea of being consistent, right? In that, okay, if I take breaks or if there are seasons where I don't do my meal preps, or if there are seasons where I don't exercise, or if there are seasons where I don't do XYZ, it means that I'm not a consistent person. And I want to debunk that myth to say that consistency is not about starting something and never stopping. Consistency is not about starting something and never stopping. It's more about the idea and the mindset that, okay, even if I stop, I can always get back on again. Even if I take a break, even if I pause, I can always get back on again. And just because I take a break, just because I pause, just because I respond to certain priorities in this season does not make me an inconsistent person. So consistency isn't starting something and never stopping. Okay. Consistency is recognizing that I can take a break if life calls for a break. I can stop. There can be a gap in some of these things, but that doesn't mean I'm an inconsistent person. Let me use an example. Imagine that you have become fluent in French. French is not my first language, but imagine maybe I've learned French and I've become fluent in French. If I stop speaking French for a while, does that mean I am inconsistent? Of course not, because it has now become part of me. It has now become a habit. It's now something that is a part of me. And so even if I take a break, doesn't mean I am not a consistent person. So consistency doesn't mean you do something forever, indefinitely, and you never stop, you never take a break. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing that I want to say that I see a lot of people tell me is that, oh, I'm just not a consistent person. It's not my personality. In fact, some people will argue, hi, Dr. Yems, welcome. Some people will argue and say that, oh, consistency is not in my nature because I like to be spontaneous, right? Consistency is not in my nature. I like to be spontaneous. I like to be exciting. I like to go with the flow, right? And so they tell me that I have the personality for consistency or I don't, right? But what I'm here to say is that consistency is not a personality trait. It's something that you learn. It's a skill that you learn. It's a habit that you learn. And so for those of us who have that barrier to becoming consistent because of that mindset and that, oh, I'm just not the type, I'm not the consistent type, I'm here to let you know that naturally, I'm also not the consistent type, so to speak. I like to go with the flow. I like to just kind of see how things go. But I had to learn. I had to learn, especially after becoming a mom, especially after running a business, running a team. I had to learn how to be consistent. So just because it doesn't come naturally to you does not mean you're not the type to be consistent, does not mean you're not the type to be consistent. So welcome everyone who has joined on YouTube, on Instagram. It's so great to have you. So far, we've talked about a couple of things myths that people believe about consistency. Number one, that consistency means starting something and and never stopping, meaning that you do it. Once you start, you do it and you do it and you do it and you never stop. Or number two, the idea that consistency is about personality, meaning that I'm either the type to be consistent or I'm not. And then you look at people who are consistent and you're, oh, I wish I could be I wish I could be like that, not recognizing that consistency is actually a skill set. It's a skill set. And just like most of us were not born speaking French, unless you're from a French speaking country and that's your native language, and you learn it over time. Most of us were not born as swimmers, and you learn it over time. These are skills. Not much of most of us were not born cooking, right? We didn't come out of our mother's womb with a spoon and a ladle in our hands, right? We learn those skills over time. I'm here to let you know that consistency is actually a skill that can be learned. And I recognize that some of us have a block to becoming consistent because we just believe that we are not consistent. Welcome, Joseph. Welcome, everyone. Fumi, Shayo, everyone who has joined. So great to have you. So great to have you. Okay, so the next myth about consistency that I want to talk about is that it has to do with how disciplined a person is. So we look at someone and we're like, oh my goodness, this person is so consistent. They're so disciplined. They are so amazing. And we don't recognize that all of us are actually consistent one way or the other. So it's not really a factor of discipline, right? We are all consistent, and that's going to be my next point. We are all consistent in one way or the other. So it's not a factor of, oh, this person is so disciplined. In fact, if you look at it and you take a closer look and you have the privilege of talking to people who are consistent, you'll actually recognize that there's a lot of systems and a lot of practice and some structure that has gone into place that now appears as consistency, right? There are systems, there are structures, there are methodologies that have gone into place that are now being projected as consistency. So again, there's no consistency gene. There's no consistency trait. A lot of it has to do with number one, our mindset around what it means to be consistent. And then number two, this idea of practice, which I'm going to talk about very soon. Right. And the last myth that I want to talk about when it comes to consistency is the idea that consistency only applies to good habits, that consistency only applies to good habits. I definitely fell in this category as well too, where I thought that, oh, to be consistent, it means, it's all about good habits. It's all about eating well. It's all about getting to bed on time. It's all about making good choices with exercise. It's all about consistently good habits, journaling, meditating, praying, all the things that we are good habits, right? But what I'm here to tell you is that many of us are actually quite consistent with our bad habits. So whether you know it or recognize it or not, we are all consistent to a certain degree. And so for some of us, we consistently check our phones first thing in the morning when we wake up, right? For some of us, we consistently drink Coke, Fanta, ginger ale, Sprite with every meal, right? For some of us, we consistently gossip. Okay, let me go there. For some of us, we consistently criticize other people. For some of us, we consistently doom scroll. We're on our phones, we're on social media, and we consistently spend 2 hours a day on social media. Am I shaking some tables? Right? For some of us, we consistently open the fridge 50 times a day looking for one thing to snack on or the other. Please, who else is in that WhatsApp group? Because that's my own WhatsApp group where we consistently are looking for, okay, what can I snack? What can I snack? What can I snack on? What can I snack on? So we are all consistent in something. We are all consistent in something. But the good news that I want to share today is that if you have been able, I will not reduce my voice. My voice is very loud so that the people at the back can hear me. Right? So we're all consistent with something. But the good news that I want to share is that at the end of the day, if you've been able to become consistent in some of these habits like snacking, some of these habits like gossiping, criticizing, and by the way, it may not necessarily be criticizing other people, it could also be criticizing yourself and your work. So if you've gotten very good and consistent in some of these things, I'm here to let you know that even the good habits that you've been struggling with and trying to be consistent with, it is also very possible and in your nature to be able to be consistent in those things as well. Okay, so I want us to do away with the narrative of, oh, I'm not the type to be consistent, or I can never be consistent, because those stories we tell ourselves are part of the problem. They now become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the fact that you've been able to be consistent with some of these habits tells us that you are able to at least become consistent in something. It's now about redirecting what those things you are consistent in now become, right? So those quote unquote good habits. So I want to clarify that when it comes to consistency, as I was preparing for today's live, I said, I know that people misunderstand consistency to be, oh, doing something over and over again without stopping. But as I was really looking at various definitions, and one of my favorite things to do is look at synonyms. What are some of the synonyms of the word consistent? And what came up was habit, right? Which I thought was very interesting as someone who studies human behavior. The idea of something becoming habitual is not automatic. It's not something you just wake up with. You don't wake up with your habits. You nurture your habits. You practice those things until they become habitual, until they become automatic. So you don't come out of your mother's womb learning how to drive. You practice driving until it becomes habitual. Some of us, some days, we don't know how we got from home to the office because we are on autopilot, right? And so when we are talking about consistency, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. The way that it's become autopilot for you to reach for your phone first thing in the morning, we also recognize that we can now enter into autopilot zone, habitual zone, automatic zone when it comes to these good habits, right? So the idea is that it takes practice. It takes practice. It takes time. It takes practice. It also takes having a method, okay? Having a system and having a method, at least at the beginning. At least at the beginning. So, for example, if you're learning how to drive, you enter, the first thing you do, no, you adjust your seat. The next thing you do, you check your mirrors. Then we're checking, okay, what foot am I using? Is it going to be on the gas? Is it going to be on the brake? And then you check, okay, am I putting it on drive? So all those things, there's a method to it. And if you went to driving school, they would have told you step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But after a while of practicing it over and over again, you enter your car, you don't even know, it's now become, again, automatic. Why? Because you've practiced. You've practiced the method. So here's what I want to say about now translating that into the habits you want to become consistent in. So whether that is your devotional time, whether that is journaling, whether that is exercise or moving your body, recognize that you need a method. And not only that, you need to practice it until it becomes automatic. That's really what consistency is. You need, first of all, a method that you practice until it becomes automatic. And these methods are going to look different for everybody. I'm going to share some of the methods that have helped me become consistent. Now, when I was looking at my Bible app, I don't know if anybody uses a Bible app, you'll know that it gives you streaks for the number of days in a row where you have read your Bible without stopping. Tomorrow or maybe the day after is going to be day 500 in a row for me. To be honest, it's a lot more than that, but there were times when maybe I was traveling and it happened to be past midnight and I missed a day, so it reset. But it's going to be day 500. Why? I have a method behind it, and that method has been practiced for like probably 6 years at this point, to the point where the first thing I'm reaching for in the morning is my phone and going into my Bible app. And that's why it's now become just automatic for me. The method for me is I read the Bible with a group of friends. So there's that accountability, right? Is that accountability. And so we have a method that has been practiced over time such that now it's become automatic, right? So that's one example. That's one example, right? And I could give a couple of different examples. And of course, feel free to share your examples in the chat. So I just wanted to shift the mindset a little bit around what consistency actually looks like. Now, in the beginning, were there times when I would miss days and weeks? Yes, of course. Absolutely. There will be times where I would go weeks without even opening the app, right? But once I found a method that worked for me and I practiced it over and over and over again, it now has become automatic, almost like a fluency in a language where you don't even have to think about it. Like the driving example I gave, where you enter your car and you're on your way without thinking about step one, step two, step three. So again, when we talk about consistency, that is what we're talking about. Getting to the point where you've practiced a method over and over again until it has now become automatic for you, right? I'm going to give a few psychology, science-based tips that will help you on your journey to become consistent. So as you're thinking about the habits that you want to start incorporating, one of the things that we've been doing, so I'll talk about some of the newer habits that we've incorporated, and that's devotional time with the kids at night. You know, there was a time where we really struggled. Sometimes we would do it in the mornings, we would forget. And then when the kids changed schools, that changed. But one of the things that I thought about is what's the one thing that I know is always consistent, whether it is or it's always in our schedule, right? Something that's already something that's already automatic, something that's already consistent in our schedule that I can now add this new habit on without thinking too much. And for us, it's bedtime, our bedtime routine. So bedtime routine from when they were little has always been a consistent routine. So that's already automatic. So now what we're doing or what we did was add another habit on top of that. We call that habit stacking, right? We call that habit stacking, where there's already a habit that's in existence. And now what you want to do is stack on a new habit to what already exists. So what that means is that we have been, again, now become consistent with Bible story time with the kids at nighttime. Because number one, their bedtime routine, there was already a machine that was going, was already on autopilot. And what we did was then added something else to that thing that was already going on in autopilot. So for you, what that looks like is thinking about your day and deciding, okay, what is something that I already do consistently, right? What is something that I already do consistently? Like I said, we are all consistent in something. I'll give an example. One of my patients was telling me that he doesn't drink water. All he drinks is coffee and Coca-Cola. He does not drink water, but he's realizing that it's taking a toll on his health. So I said to him, okay, you only drink coffee, you only drink Coke, you want to drink more water. We already know that you have a habit of always drinking Coke, of always drinking coffee. How about we just tack on a new habit to that? The new habit of drinking 1 glass of water. And so he did that for a couple of weeks. And when I saw him a few weeks later, he said, you know what? That really worked. As I'm preparing my coffee, I'm filling up my glass of water, and I'm now drinking the water instead of the coffee or instead of the Coke. Right. So those are just some tips, or that is just one tip that you can do, is that think about what it is that you want to become more consistent in and tack on the new habit to it. Because again, remember, the goal is practice. The goal is picking a method, practicing the method over and over again until it becomes automatic. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to tack on a new habit onto an old habit. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is recognizing that your seasons will change. I speak to a lot of women. I speak to a lot of women who become moms, or they go from being a mom of one to a mom of two, or they've changed jobs, they've moved cities. So these women are going through transitions, and of course, it applies to men as well too. And they get so frustrated because they believe that, oh, I should still be doing the same thing. I should still be doing the same habit, even though so much has changed about my life. And I have to remind them that you are in a different season now. So if you learned to drive an automatic car, when I say automatic, meaning that you only have two pedals, you don't have to shift gears and all of that. And then all of a sudden, and you've done that for years, you don't have to think about it. You enter your car and you go. And then you are now required to drive a different car, shift gears, right? Or let's even say it's a different model. I drive a Toyota Corolla. And if you put me in a different brand of car, I'm always like, okay, I need to figure things out. It takes a while for me to get into a routine of driving a different model of car. Hi, Rennie. So, what am I trying to say? I'm saying that when a season changes, do not automatically expect that all the habits that you had in a previous season, you're going to maintain in this new season. There's a period of relearning that is going to be required. Of course, you may not be starting from ground zero. You may not be starting from scratch, but recognize that that same momentum that you had before, there's going to be a stalling, and that is okay. That is okay. If you are someone who used to go to the gym 5 days a week, and now you've moved to a different location, and you're having to figure out what your schedule looks like, what your capacity looks like, where is even the gym, right? It's going to take some time to get back on that momentum. So recognize that when seasons change, that consistency that you had before may not be maintained, and that's okay. Give yourself time, give yourself grace to get back into the swing of things. Now, as someone who's moved around multiple times, I think I just expect that it's going to take some time. Okay. I do what I can. And as the routine settles and other things settles, then I will pick things up again. So understand that when it comes to consistency, if you are experiencing a change in seasons, it's going to slow things down. It's going to slow things down. Hi, Mushakwe. We're just talking about consistency and some of the things that get in the way and some of the things that we can do to be more consistent. There will be a replay on Instagram and on YouTube as well too. So if you want to catch things from the beginning so that you can catch up on the conversation. But I talked about the fact that seasons will change. And when seasons change, it's important to be flexible enough to recognize that, okay, things may not look like they did 6 months ago, 3 months ago, but it's okay to pick up from where I can, do what I can until I have a method. Because sometimes it takes a while to even figure out what that method is. Like I said before, consistency is really just practicing the same method over and over again until it becomes automatic. So sometimes it takes a while to even figure out, okay, what is my method? What is my method? If my method before was going to the gym for an exercise class 5 times a week, and now the season has changed such that I've moved, or such that I have a young baby now that I can't leave my house, the way I used to. What is my new method? My new method might be YouTube videos. And it might take a while to even find the YouTube videos that fit my lifestyle and what I enjoy to do. So it takes a while to find the method that fits your current lifestyle to be able to practice it, to even to be able to become automatic in the first place. And this is why I tell people it's okay to experiment. Okay, it's okay to experiment. Don't expect that what worked in the last season is exactly what's going to work in the new season. And also don't expect that the first thing you try is going to be, exactly what you need. You may need to try different workout videos. You may need to try, okay, do I want to do dancing now or do I want to do weight training now? You may need to try, okay, am I more of a morning person now, or is this more of a late afternoon slash evening thing now? So consistency is not going to be automatic. First of all, you have to establish what is the method. You want to practice the method over time before you can now say, okay, now I'm consistent. Acknowledge your progress. I have a lot of type A's, a lot of type A's in my practice, a lot of perfectionists in my practice, and they just want to keep going, milestone after milestone, not acknowledging the progress that they've made. The problem with that is that one of the main driving factors when it comes to consistency is a reward system, right? A reward system in that you acknowledge, oh, what I did was actually a good thing. You take note of it, you get a bit of a dopamine hit from that, and then you want to do it again, right? Habits form because of that reward system. And that reward system could simply just be saying, you know what? I worked out for 10 minutes today. Or you know what? I read 2 verses of the Bible today. Or you know what? I spent 5 minutes connecting with each child today and acknowledging it instead of blowing past it. Because when we don't acknowledge, we don't give our brains the opportunity to reward us for even the small steps that we took. And that is so important if we're talking about consistency to recognize that you're not just going to wake up tomorrow and want to do it again. You need to acknowledge that, you know what, it was a good thing that I did. Therefore, I'm going to do it again tomorrow. It's part of what we call the habit cycle. The reward part is so important. And for some people, the reward could be sharing. One of the first things that I do in my therapy sessions is asking, okay, what do you want to commend yourself for this week? What did you do this week that you want to commend yourself for? And when we do that, we're taking a moment to acknowledge that, you know what, that was a hard thing that I did. First of all, it shows that I'm capable of doing it. And it feels good to actually report that this was something good that I did. So the brain is like, oh, okay, that feels good. Let's do it again tomorrow or let's do it again this week, right? So instead of blowing past the progress that you're making, recognizing it, acknowledging it, taking note of it, because that's one thing that's going to help build the cycle. Remember, we said that consistency is a habit, okay? Consistency is a skill. And one of the ways that we reinforce habits is by rewarding ourselves. Now, I'm not saying go and buy yourself ice cream because you walked for 10 minutes. No. But even giving yourself, okay, good job. Good job, Moshakwe. Good job, Rennie, right? Giving yourself a pat on the back is good enough. That tells your brain, okay, that was good. That was good. Let's do it again. And that's important in keeping the habit going and going and going. Support and community. This for me has been a hack. I shared earlier that my streak with reading the Bible has come because of community, right? It has come because of community. Anytime that I've been able to sustain a certain habit, community has been a big part of that. Whether that is in exercising, some of the times where I've been most consistent with my workout was when I was part of an exercise group, right? Consistency with my studies has to do with studying in a group or studying in the library, right? Where other people are also in the library studying. So being surrounded by people who have a common goal, whether you're doing it together or so that would be like an exercise class or just having people around you by what we call social facilitation, right? Being in the gym, maybe you're not in an exercise class, but there are other people working out, and you look up and you say, okay, if that 70 something year old woman can do it, I can do it too. And it keeps you going, right? So if you're building consistency, so I'm going to use the example I gave earlier, which is speaking French, right? If you are immersed in a community of other French speakers, you're more likely to build that skill a lot faster. Right. So when you're in community with other people, when you're doing this with other people, whether it's directly in that you're physically in a group with other people or indirectly just immersed in around other people, it can go a long way. It can go a long way. And the last thing that I want to say, because I think it would be unfair if I talked about all of the psychology of consistency and the psychology of forming habits, if I didn't touch on deeper issues, because I can come here and say, oh, just practice, pick your habits, get a method, experiment and see what works. Practice, practice, practice that method until it becomes automatic, without acknowledging that for some people, there are certainly deeper issues that can get in the way of their consistency. Deeper issues. So if you're someone who truly, truly struggles not just with consistency, but even initiating the habit in the first place, we may be dealing with deeper issues. Today in my therapy sessions, I talked to many of my clients about what we call thinking traps. Right. Thinking traps was one of the topics of conversation with about three or four of them today. And when we talk about thinking traps, we're talking about patterns of thinking that keep us stuck, right? That keep us from moving forward. Examples would be all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking, which is if I can't do an hour of this exercise routine, then I'm not going to do anything at all, right? Or if I cannot meal prep 7 days a week, then I'm not going to meal prep at all. I'm not even going to bother starting at all. If I can't get everything perfectly done the way that it's supposed to be or should be done, then I'm not going to bother trying. So that's a thinking trap that some of us get stuck in. And it's a deeper issue that will need reworking, unlearning, rewiring, etc. To the point where you're like, you know what, something is better than nothing. Even 10 minutes of exercise counts instead of throwing the whole thing away without even trying. I was talking to someone today and she said that she can get a box of cookies and maybe she intends to eat two. And then she opens it and says, you know what? I started with two. I might as well eat the whole box. And I've definitely been there, right? Whereas we tell ourselves, okay, I've thrown away my diet. I might as well just throw the whole diet for the whole away for the whole week. I will start again on Monday, whereas next Monday, right? Whereas we're still at the beginning of the week. So reminding you that eating two cookies is better than eating 10 cookies, okay? So we can't stop at two. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So just because you started eating the box of cookies doesn't mean you have to finish it. And just because you can't work out for an hour doesn't mean you don't work out at all. So certain thinking traps like all or nothing, certain thinking traps like catastrophizing, thinking the worst case scenario. Well, if I start this, then if I start working out, what if I get injured and then I won't be able to walk again and then I'll be bedridden forever. Okay, well, why don't we just start and see? And, that's not likely to happen. So there are certain thinking traps that cause anxiety, that cause us to act, well, what if this doesn't work? Or what if I don't get this right the first time? Or what if people laugh at me? There's a fear of being seen, right? A fear of trying, a fear of being perceived as a novice, right? Which at some point we are all going to be novices, okay? When it comes to practice, remember we said consistency is about practice. You're never going to be perfect to start off with. So you have to be willing to try. You have to be willing to practice. And if there are deeper issues that you're like, okay, Dr. Yewande, I've heard you. You said I should pick a method. You said I should practice. And you said that ultimately all of it is going to become automatic. But I just can't even seem to start in the first place. Then we might be talking about deeper issues, right? And these are the kinds of things that as a mental health therapist, we deal with. Right. And so if you really find that you are stuck, genuinely stuck, and you've tried everything that I've shared today, it may be that there's something that's deeper rooted that needs to be uprooted and changed and addressed through the course of therapy. Now, if you're in the Alberta area, Cami Counseling Services, of course, would be happy to see you for mental health services. And whether that's you dealing with anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, or some of these thinking traps that we talked about today is certainly part of what I do as my bread and butter. And so feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to connect. But in summary, consistency is a skill. Consistency is a skill. It doesn't come from your DNA. It doesn't come from forcing yourself to be more disciplined. It comes from, number one, picking a methodology that suits your current season. And when I say methodology, I mean if you're talking about wanting to eat healthier, one methodology could look like order could look like when we were in Toronto, we had chef's kitchen, chef's plate that I would order 3 times a week, right? So that could be one methodology. Another methodology could be learning more about healthy salads, whether it's salads with protein and vegetables and all of that, and that could be your methodology. Another methodology could simply be stop adding sugar to your tea. Okay. I was talking to a woman last week and she said she would add 3 spoons of sugar to her tea and she would drink tea 5 times a day. So we're talking about 15 spoons of sugar per day. And she's not the only one. I've heard several people report this to me time and time again. And so your methodology when it comes to healthy eating could be to cut back on some certain things that you're eating and then practicing that methodology over and over and over again until it becomes a habit. And that essentially is what consistency is all about, is what consistency is all about. So we've come to at the end of today's live stream. I want to say a very big thank you to everyone who joined live on Instagram and on YouTube. If you came in partway through the live, certainly feel free to catch the replay and start from the beginning. Share it with a friend. Share it with that friend that's always complaining, oh, I'm never consistent. I'm never consistent. The friend that's always asking, how do you stay so consistent? Please go ahead and share it with them. And I will catch you in our next live stream. I do want to use this opportunity to remind you that you are doing so much better than you think. Okay, bye.